The year is 1955. I'd gotten my commercial pilot's license out of Detroit City Airport, and I had a Cessna 140 I traded for a Mooney Mite, which was a little single-place wooden airplane, retractable landing gear, and 65 horsepower Lycoming engine. It only carried 11 gallons of fuel, but it only burned 3.5 gallons per hour, cruising at 125 miles per hour. So it gave me a little over a 200-mile range, basically, that was reasonable before you wanted to stop and refuel the airplane. Prior to this, Neil Loving, who had a flying service there at Detroit City Airport, had flown his Goodyear Racer down to Kingston, Jamaica. This sounded like a thing for me to do. So I got my change together. I think I had $100 left. And I was 17 years old. And so I launched out of Detroit, each leg 200 miles or less, all the way down to Key West, Florida. Once into Key West, Florida, refueled again, and my next stop would be Havana, Cuba. I had no radio on board. It was just basic instruments, and so I relied on light signals from the tower as far as clearance to land and everything. And I included that in my flight plan to Havana, Cuba. Once down to Havana, Cuba, they treated me with great respect. We're kind of amazed that I've flown down there in this little bitty airplane. And they took some buckets out there since the fuel nozzle was too big for the tank filling cap, and we refueled the airplane. Once out of Havana, I planned on central Cuba stop at Cienfuegos, which is on the south coast, and there I refueled again and on to Camagüey, Cuba. This was going to be my last stop before crossing the Caribbean between Cuba and Jamaica. Went into Montego Bay, Jamaica, was my first stop after leaving Camagüey. Refueled again, and my next stop across the island of Jamaica was Montego Bay. And Montego Bay was a beautiful little spot, a large bay there that there was an American aircraft carrier parked in there. And once I got into Montego Bay, the friends of Neil Loving there in Detroit came to pick me up and take me into town. And I ended up doing some tours around in town because I was a minor celebrity as far as they were concerned. It's only the second time in history that a small airplane had come down there. And this was great fun. But on the way back out of Kingston, stopped in Montego Bay again. But not knowing what the winds aloft were or anything, I took off from Montego Bay, heading for Camagüey in Cuba. And the fuel gauge kept going down and down, and my time was running past the 2-hour mark, and no airport in sight. I wasn't too sure exactly where the location of the airport was. So, to end up with a dead engine, I picked out a farmer's field and lined up on that, let down, and landed in this farmer's field. Before touching down, I shut the mags off so that the prop would stop, I hoped, horizontally. And it did, and sadly, there was a rut there that snapped the link of the nose gear, and it went down. Here I was in a farmer's field in Cuba. Well, I wasn't too sure how to get a hold of anybody else that I'd filed a flight plan with. So I saw a little house, walked over to that. They spoke no English, but they saw the airplane, and they were all excited. And they drove me into a little town to the police station. And from the police station, people in Camagüey sent a car down, and I rode back up there. Once in Camagüey, there was a Pan Am office there with a mechanic, and he fashioned another nose gear link for me and machined it out. And a couple days later, we went back down to the airplane, replaced the broken link with a new one that had been manufactured, and walked off an area where I knew I could take off, and cranked her back up and took off and flew into Camagüey. Refueled again, San Pugos, Havana, from Havana into Key West. Now I was kind of wondering about getting into Key West and going through customs because I had several bottles of rum on board, and I was not 21. But they didn't give a damn about that. And so then again, on up to Detroit. Got into Detroit, and we had quite a celebration there after this whole thing. And Neil Loving had a few giggles about the whole operation, but it was a successful thing. And at 17 years old, I was pretty puffy-chested over the whole thing, and even made the New York Times on that stuff. But that was an adventure and a half. But my future would have a lot more violent adventures. Thank you.